Philadelphia 76ers continue to sit and wait for the fateful day that is the NBA draft lottery, but if you thought things were bad in Philadelphia, at least we're not the Dallas Mavericks. Nico Harrison has opened his mouth once again in defense of the Luka Doncic trade and speaking about the outlook of the Mavericks organization, and also gave his thoughts on the trade that sent Quentin Grimes to the Philadelphia 76ers in exchange for Caleb Martin. I want to dive into exactly what he said with each of these, and I will say just straight up here, it has made me feel far better about this Sixers organization watching this absolute meltdown going down in Texas right now, that I never have seen an organization run this way or have this direct universal of a bad look from start to finish. And I mean, the reports continue to come. I don't believe this is the valley, the worst case scenario for the Mavericks. I think there is more information that's going to continue to come out, but I do want to talk specifically about what was said by Nico Harrison about the decision to trade Quentin Grimes in exchange for Caleb Martin, the Sixers' outlook for retaining Quentin Grimes, and a couple other factors that were brought up. So do want to start off with this quote here. This originally occurring from, by the way, the closed door meeting that Nico Harrison did have. He did do his end of season presser today as well, so everyone was allowed to get their questions in, but there was a closed door meeting with no recordings, no cameras, which I've straight up never even heard of in professional sports in this type of setting. But nonetheless, this report coming that Tim Cotto from DLLS asked Nico, "You didn't speak following the trade deadline, having addressed the Quentin Grimes trade. I think I understand loosely why that trade was made. You guys did not feel that you were going to retain Quentin Grimes as he went into free agency. Why was a draft pick attached to that trade, and what was the logic behind the negotiations of that deal in general?" And Nico Harrison said, quote, "Well, it was really about getting Caleb Martin. It was less about Grimes. We traded for Grimes. We got a good look at Grimes. Great player. I think it worked out for both teams. It worked out for him. He's a free agent situation. So we got to go to a team where he could shoot all the balls and really display his offense. And for us, we weren't interested in that. We were interested in how he could help us win games. And we had the opportunity to get Caleb, which the opportunity only afforded itself because Anthony Davis, he gave us that ability because he had a trade clause, a trade kicker, and he opted out of that. And so that gave us the room to be able to do that. Just an incredibly brutal answer on just about every account here. By the way, just kind of trying to praise Anthony Davis in this is completely unreal, but nonetheless, I do want to dive into exactly what was said here, and let me give one more quote that I think gives a little implication of it as well before I go. And the follow-up from Tim Cotto of DLLS says, "The perception is that Grimes is a younger, better player than Caleb Martin. Maybe you disagree, but why was a second-round pick, a valuable second-round pick, attached to that deal?" And Nico said, quote, "Well, if you don't like Caleb, then you're not going to like the trade. But we value Caleb more, and we also got a second-round pick back." And to give the exact clarity on this, as is written up from this Liberty Ballers article here, shout out to Erin Grugan, who I believe wrote this. She writes, "First, let's get it out of the way that the second-round pick the Mavericks got back was not originally in that trade deal at all. The concession was only made after there were concerns with Martin's hip after his physical for his new team. The original deal that Harrison was happy to take was simply getting Martin in return for the 2025 second. So I'm not sure Harrison should even get credit for the pick added later. Plus, that second rounder the Sixers coughed up to Dallas to take Martin is their own for 2030. When in the draft order that 2030 second rounder will ultimately fall is completely up in the air as well." And the draft pick that the Sixers did add on this, I believe it is 37th overall. It is an early second round pick, a very valuable draft pick, and a guy that I think you could probably get like a win now piece with. Like, think about what a Dembona was drafted with this year, and Bonus still a little bit more raw in the skill set, but a guy that we see the vision for. There's certainly a pathway to getting a player at minimum like that, and I love that spot early in the second round because you can kind of sift through who are the guys that fell out of the first, why are they falling, is there value here? Little hat tip to Daryl Morey, and particularly because this first-round draft pick is still up in the air. Once again, there is a 64% chance that they retain it, but that still means a 60 or 36% chance that they do not keep the pick. So knowing that you have that in the back pocket is a huge deal for the Sixers team. Now, when having this Caleb Martin and Quentin Grimes discussion, I first got to be hand up my bad on the situation. I was wrong on this one. I'm a Caleb Martin guy. I do believe in him as a playoff riser, but that was not the case, and I have to believe he was not healthy down the stretch there. He scored a grand total of 0 points across those two play-in matchups, and to kind of compare them side by side, first I will start off with what we saw from Quentin Grimes. These are the stats in the entire season: that he averaged 14.6 points per game this season, 4.3 rebounds, and 3.0 assists, shooting 46.7% from the field, 38.5% from three. And to compare that directly to Caleb Martin, he finished the season with 7.9 points per game, 3.9 rebounds, 2.1 assists, shot 42.4% from the field, and 35.9% from three. I don't mean to be too harsh about Caleb Martin specifically, but I do think he fits the criteria as one of those random Heat role players that don't play quite the same when you get him in another location. We've seen it happen time and time again, and I think Daryl Morey started to sniff that out and realize the mistake before it became more of a significant mistake. Now, we'll see. Caleb could ultimately bounce back now that he has an offseason to get recovered, whatever the case may be. But Quentin Grimes is surely the prize of this deal from a Sixers perspective, and a guy that they're going to be pretty intent on keeping. In fact, Daryl Morey did point that out directly in his postseason press conference, as he said, quote, Sixers president of basketball operations Daryl Morey unprompted on Grimes during his exit interview last week with head coach Nick Nurse. Quote, I did want to mention Quentin Grimes. I think he was a real bright spot. We're excited for him to come back. We've positioned ourselves to bring him back. He had multiple 40-point performances. His defense, we think, really fits well with Tyrese, and we think he's a very good fit here. And we think with Joel, Paul, and Tyrese, he's a very good fit. I will say, when watching this certainly was something that Daryl Morey had on his chest, that he wanted to make sure he put out there. And by all accounts, that is the game plan from here, that you don't make this type of deal from a Sixers perspective if you didn't have the intention on giving him a long-term contract, and the cards are stacked in their favor. With him being a restricted free agent, which what that means is if another team sends an offer, the Sixers get a chance to match. That is a huge advantage from a negotiation standpoint, and it's pretty rare that you do see restricted free agents leave for that very reason there. So Grimes is in that spot, and unless there is a lucrative offer from another NBA team, and really the Brooklyn Nets are the only real candidate for this, I do think that the Sixers, we should expect Quentin Grimes to be back in uniform. And I do love that little guard trio that they are building with Tyrese Maxey, with Jared McCain, and with Quentin Grimes. That's a really nice young trio to build around. Whether that means continuing to compete now with this hope that you could get one healthy run with Paul George and Joel Embiid, or that's beginning to be the pass the baton, move on to this next era of Sixers basketball. Both are on the table, but these are good talents that you want to add. And once again, I do think that fateful May 12th day of the NBA draft lottery will have a lot to say about what that outlook and what that conversation is. Now, Quentin Grimes himself, kind of cool that we're starting to see a window into him a little bit. He did just go on the Old Man and the Three podcast, talk a little bit, and he had a couple cool quotes. First, I wanted to highlight, which hits a little home for Philadelphia fans, is that this article writes up, current Sixers guard Quentin Grimes hopped on the Young Man and the Three podcast and told a story of how he played some pickup with Harden while he was a member of the Houston Rockets. Harden was so impressed that he helped him get to the University of Houston through a phone call to Cougars coach Kelvin Sampson. That led to Grimes giving a lot of praise to Harden. Grimes stated on Harden, quote, just being one of those one-on-one players. I mean, I don't know if it's a rhythm, but it's not a rhythm kind of the way he dribbles, and he's left-handed. The sidestep is different. So just watching him, even guarding him, is tough, because if he jumps forward with a shot, you can't contest crazy. They're going to call it. He's James Harden. He's going to get the call. He's just special. He's a bigger dude. He's 6'5". He can put his shoulder into you. He can get to fade. He can get all the way to the rim, and he's throwing a lob to whoever is around the rim. He's just a special player. And I will say, when watching this interview a little bit, pretty cool to hear James Harden going out of his way to help Quentin Grimes. And shout out to Harden, who's doing his thing for the Clippers. They're actually playing tonight as well, so going to be tapping into that game. I'm not a James Harden guy, but I can appreciate him a lot more. I think it's best for me personally to appreciate him from a distance, but I do think at his core, he's a good dude, and he doesn't get enough credit for that. And this exact relationship here, that Kelvin Sampson did serve as an interim coach for the Rockets for a brief period of time. So that was the relationship between Harden and Kelvin Sampson. So he was able to make that call, and at that point, Grimes had transferred from Kansas to Houston. And now when describing him as a player, I do think he's the pretty quintessential Houston basketball player. He's probably a little bit more polished offensively than their run-of-the-mill guy, but he is a guy that is a hard-nosed defense-first player, and I think has embraced that identity in a way that should directly translate when this is a complete winning basketball team. He also was asked about his favorite player to play with on this Sixers team. Now, to be fair and preface this answer before I give it out, Quentin Grimes didn't exactly get the top selections on this Sixers roster. That obviously he did not play with Joel Embiid. He did not play with Paul George, I believe, at all. He certainly didn't only play with Tyrese Maxey a little bit, did not play with Jared McCain whatsoever. So it's not like he had the full sample size. But his answer, maybe not surprisingly, was Gershon Yabusele. And he said, quote, I probably would say Yabo. Yabu. He's probably been the main guy. You saw him in the Olympics. He really blew up and made a name for himself. People knew who he was, but he just came back on the scene. Just playing with him, Grimes continue. He's been a pick and pop guy. We got a good little chemistry out there on the court. If I come off a pick and roll and they double me, now I just kick it to Yabu. He just hit a three. We got a good connection right there with that. He looks for me all the time, so like that's just a good thing. That's a good thing to have. I mean, you want to have the ball in your hands, so playing with him has been fun. And shout out to Gershon Yabusele, who surely was a bright spot in an otherwise disastrous season. I still am hopeful that Yabusele will be returning to the Sixers team. A lot of it's going to depend on, once again, I keep bringing up this May 12th date, but based on where that pick falls in, it's a much different outlook if you have the number 1 overall pick, the money that comes with that, and Cooper Flagg being the guy, that it isn't as high on the priority list. And when looking around, there certainly are teams that, if they value Yabusele in a high regard, could lure him away with a more attractive offer than what the Sixers are able to come with. Now, when you look around the league, with that being said, there aren't as many teams just overflowing with cap space in the way you might expect. Even some of these teams that are bad, that are in that kind of tanking range, don't have as clean of a cap sheet as you would expect there. So there aren't that many options to steal Yabusele away. Still pretty up in the air and still pretty fluid conversation at this point. I know Daryl Morey did address that he would love to have him back in his post-game presser as well. So keeping the door open, even though the possibility of another team coming in and taking him is certainly on the table as well. But ultimately, right here, right now, I can't believe that watching this Dallas Mavericks team unfold, the organization unfold, has made me feel as much better about the Sixers as I expected. They're not that far off. They just need a couple breaks to go their way. We will see what the rest of the summer has in store. But to the Mavericks fans out there, I certainly just feel sympathetic. I feel bad. I've never seen an organization be unraveled this quickly. And for the Mavericks specifically, that's an organization that when I think back over my lifetime in my head, have always done things more or less the right way, that I've respected. A guy like Mark Cuban being able to run that team like a fan to an extent. They've done a lot of really nice things, shown loyalty to Dirk Nowitzki. All these things that they built up over years and years have just been taken apart by Nico Harrison and the organization directly. So, and now as their reward to that, they get to watch Luka Doncic compete for the Los Angeles Lakers and maybe win a championship. Certainly in the future, possibly this year. That is a tough stretch for Mavs fans, so nothing but sympathy out there. Hopefully Caleb Martin turns up and is better for you guys. We'll not be rooting against Caleb or this Mavs team by whatsoever, but do hope Quentin Grimes is sticking right here in Philadelphia. Let me know what you guys think about that and the Quentin Grimes experience as a whole. Drop some anti-Nico Harrison comments in the chat if you do want that as well. Let them fly as always. Make sure you're hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and I'll be back talking to you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.